Why introduce an intermediate currency that is not dollars? What does that do to the model? Why couldn't it just be dollars instead of credits?
You can sort of change the rate card, so to speak. We are actually a multi-currency product, as you would expect. We needed a currency that says, okay, well, things cost of varying amounts or whatever. And so one of the decisions we made is a credit is a credit. So we have a unified currency, which is across all of HubSpot. And the only thing that varies is that some actions might cost multiple credits instead of one credit. So the idea was, can we keep it simple, come down to a single currency, and then we can sell that currency, so to speak. And these kind of credit-based models have been around for a long time. We've had them in the mobile industry with minutes and things like that. And then that, obviously evolved over the years.
Welcome back to the Get Paid podcast. I am your host, Manny Medina, co-founder and CEO of Paid. This week, we're doing something a little different, and we are re-releasing an episode we recorded a few months back when I sat down with Dharmesh from HubSpot. And even now, I keep having people asking me just how much they enjoy this episode. So I wanted to bring it back. We talked about HubSpot move to credits, the future of vibe coding, and much, much more. This is so relevant right now because they actually executed that move. So I wanted you to hear what was he thinking before they did it. If you missed it last time, you're in for a great one. We'll be back with a new episode next week. But in the meantime, enjoy this episode with the legendary Dharmesh. And as always, let's get paid.
Dharmesh, I'm so excited to have you. I have a long catalog of questions. I have no idea how far this is going to take. I had an agenda in mind, but then halfway through it, I was like, you know what? Let's just roll with things as they come. So let's start thematically, let's start from the top. OpenAI released the strawberry release. I think it was November, maybe December last year. It was the O1 model, right? That birthed reasoning to the scene. What has gone through your mind since you saw the model all the way to now? What's exciting? What's the worrying? Let's see what happens. The full Dharmesh flow of this.
Yeah, and I'm thinking back. So I've had multiple kind of moments of wow with GPT at large. Back to GPT-2 that Sam gave me access to before there was a ChatGPT app. So I just had the API and had to code my own minimalist chat app, and I had a conversation with it. And even then, this was 2 years prior to ChatGPT launching. It was amazing. And you sort of had this, and I was, late night emailing Brian. I sent him the transcript of the conversation that I had, which I still have for historical purposes.
What was the context of the email? Look what we can do now.
No, what this thing can do is this is an unedited transcript of a conversation that I had with AI, right? Like I just laid it out there. I'm like, this is going to be big. And it took a while for the world to catch up. And I think, and then when ChatGPT launched, everyone sort of figured out what I had seen a glimpse of, which is this is real. And then we've all had our kind of magical moments. I can't believe software can actually do this, right? And so that was kind of moment number two is sort of witnessing. And obviously ChatGPT was, and GPT-3 was much better than 2 was. 2 was very rudimentary. And then so 3 sort of awakened the world to what we might now call this kind of single shot prompting, no reasoning, but still very, very good at kind of building this world model and a broad range of prompts. What reasoning changed, at least in my head, is that, we had always thought, we collectively, the industry, or at least most of us mere mortals that were not working at the frontier labs, were like, okay, well, I sort of understand the nature of scaling laws that says we can throw more compute and more data at this and it'll get better. And reasoning, what that changed was that, okay, well, not all of this kind of learning necessarily happens, or the compute investment has to happen in pre-training. It could actually happen post-training at inference time. That says, okay, if we just give the model with the existing data that it has just time to sort of self-reflect and quote unquote think, it can come up with a higher quality answers. And that was groundbreaking, both in its simplicity and elegance, and we can talk a little bit about how it actually works. But then it sort of opened up an entire new dimension of what can be done with these models, right? So now we're not limited simply by how much compute we throw at it in pre-training and train the model for hundreds of millions of dollars and go on for months at a time. It's like now we can say, we can throw Inference-Time compute at it, and what to me that unlocks is that that's something we can sort of dial up and down as well, right? And we're starting to see that in some of the newer reasoning models that says, okay, I want you to overthink this particular coding problem, or I want you to dial up the reasoning, use more tokens.
Yeah, you have to they think fast, and you have to like go for a long time and go think a lot about this.
Yeah, and so I think and from a business perspective, I think the thing that it unlocks is that it can now do reasoning. That means it can do job at what I think of as like functional decomposition. That says, can I take a larger order task and kind of have the model itself say, oh, here are the things I need to accomplish in order to get that task done. It can have effectively a short-term memory to keep track of what it has and hasn't done, and kind of cycle back and can follow multiple paths in parallel to say, here are 4 ways to solve that. This one seems to make more sense. And it's all doing this sort of quote unquote in its head. And that unlocks a bunch of business use cases that previously weren't possible with just a pure non-reasoning model. So I'm very excited about what that does.
So when you think about like the things that you're excited and things that you're worried about, and the transformation that SaaS is going through right now, and like you're living in your own skin at HubSpot, like it's just SaaS in large. What is this ability to reason now and Inference-Time compute brings to bear in terms of jobs, things that we can bring to the market, threats and possibilities?
Yeah, a few thoughts. One on the jobs front. I tend to lean towards the kind of optimistic side of it in terms of technology. I know AI is different from prior waves that have come, but there are some similarities. So I think there is going to be some disruption because AI is going to be able to do more and more. We're moving from relatively kind of low-level tasks to we're going to move towards higher and higher tasks. We're seeing this already. It's moving very, very quickly. So I think that's definitely going to have an impact on the job market. The optimist in me says that AI will kind of giveth more than it taketh away in the kind of grander scheme of things, which is, and we've seen this with automation and technologies in the past that says, okay, well, there were roles now that are just unnecessary because those tasks can now be done by technology. This is even the pre-AI world. And we sort of accept that. I think it just sort of elevates humanity at large to say, okay, now we can take kind of our specifically oriented brains and apply them to things that are more creative, less of a grind, and I think increases human potential. So that's the optimist in me. And what it as a software entrepreneur, what it does from a business perspective, which the reason we should all be excited is that we can now do with AI. Using software, things that we never imagined software would be able to actually do, right? We've always built tools and we've said, oh, we can increase the productivity of X role by Y% or something like that. And that's great. And we've built, lots and lots of market cap for lots and lots of companies and driven lots of productivity for our collective customers. But now it's like, it's a whole different game, right? It's like, okay, well, it's not just about increasing productivity by a marginal percent, or it's like we can sort of reimagine what we can do with software, which is both exciting from an opportunity perspective, but then also, and there are questions that float around, oh, does this mean SaaS is dead, right? Because AI is going to just basically be able to do everything. People are going to vibe code their own applications. Why do we need software companies? So there's that kind of line of reasoning, which I have thoughts on.
I actually love your post on this where you said like what, and I like this one thing where you said the reason we're not doing this at HubSpot, even though anybody can, is focus. Is that focus means that there are some things that you decide you're going to do and do very well, and some things that you decide you're not going to do very well. So you're not going to code your own HR application or payroll. Turns out that could be a little hard, and like a lot of lives, depend on getting paid.
Yeah. And even so, let's assume like even if we don't go after the big ones or even the hard, like payroll is a super hard category, regulation, things like that. Even the easier ones like expense tracking, project pick your thing of choice.
Yeah. Project management, right. Collaboration, any of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I put this in the LinkedIn post. I was proud of this line, so modestly I'll put it back out there, which is, companies should be focusing all available calories on things that create customer value. Period. Right. So if you start with that principle, it's like, okay, well, yes, we have the engineers, we have the wherewithal. LMs are definitely good enough to build, relatively robust applications now. But just because we can doesn't mean we should. Whether it's a low-level app or it's like, okay, well, if there is an existing SaaS application that mostly meets our needs for whatever thing we're trying to get done, we should 100% of the time be using that application. Now, if it doesn't exist, I mean, there's definitely reasons like, oh, we need this particular thing automated, or this thing, this tool that it's too small of a problem. There are no real legitimate software companies out that solve it. Fine. But if a software application that you can buy off the shelf that gets you even like 80% of the way there, I think would be foolish to try and replace that.
I think every startup out there is just cheering you on. It's like, yeah, go Dharmesh. Say it louder for the people in the back.
Yeah. So at a related note, we should because it's just talking about the business aspects and the impact of AI. There's been kind of discussion around will AI kill SaaS as another kind of related theme. And I haven't written a post about this, so this should be next in my lineup. Is that
I can see it in your head? So let's get a preview of that post.
It's definitely in my head. And so here's, if we go back and you've been around enough to see this, when when Salesforce came along and introduced the idea of SaaS, and built a massive company, super successful, and all credit to the team and to Benioff, because it was truly visionary. And it was interesting. So at that time, you might recall, they had this, they put on buttons and everything, like the no software thing, right? They had the word software crossed out with the big white button, red slash go through it. And both Benioff and others knew that he didn't literally mean no software, because obviously Salesforce was a software company. What he meant, and that the shorthand was, software as we knew it, as it was sold, as it was deployed, no longer makes sense. This is the new world. SaaS is the new world, right? And he was exactly right about that. So I think what's going to happen now. So by the way, and what that changed was, instead of running things on-prem, you're going to run it on the cloud. As a result of that, we're going to have multi-tenancy. As a result of that, the business models can actually be different. We can charge differently for software than we may have historically done with a large enterprise license and a 20% maintenance trailer, right? There was all that existed. And so there was a set of kind of dominoes that fell together as a result of that kind of movement to the cloud. And so we all know that, and it's been a great run for software companies. But the reality is, with the introduction of SaaS, what did not happen was the end of software, right? What happened was the blossoming of software. It was even better times for people to be building software companies. It just needed to be built on this new model.
Can you make the argument, Dharmesh, that SaaS brought software closer to the customer, or did it really do nothing?
Oh, it definitely brought us closer. I'll give you one tactical example, because I've had, my first startup was, pre-cloud, pre-internet. And the way we had to sort it, and it was in the enterprise software category. So we would build products. We would send them on CDs and floppy drives even, back then. And the hardest thing as a software entrepreneur, as a developer, is that you could ship a product out there and you had literally no idea what percentage of your customers had installed the latest release, that you had to pick, you had what the usage was. Is like, does Susie use it, 5 times every day or never? Like, we had no visibility.
The software didn't call back home to report itself.
Exactly. Had no way to phone home, right? And then we got some instrumentation back over the fullness of time, but that was effectively the kind of the standard model. And once we went to the cloud, it's like you're shining this bright light onto your customers and what they're doing and what they're struggling with, and we now have such kind of rich visibility into what our customers are doing. So just by that alone, I would never trade SaaS for the older model. Put everything else aside. Let's say we didn't have multi-tenancy, didn't have but just that alone was worth a shift, and it was transformative for as builders.
I think that point of like understanding how people are using the software and being able to see it with your own eyes, I think that is probably the most important contribution of SaaS to bringing software closer to the people. So what happens with agents now? What happens with AI? How does that change SaaS?
Effectively a similar thing, right? And we may not be running around with labels that say SaaS with a red line through it, but effectively, I think what's happening is that we're going to be working at an even higher level of abstraction as builders, right? So before we've had, and the languages have gotten better over the decades that I've been, I've been at this for 30 plus years now. And you see, we went from assembly to C to C++ to 4GLs and all, and we've had this kind of movement where we can work at higher levels of abstraction. AI takes that up a massive, massive notch, right? So as builders, we can say, and I mean builders now more broadly, it doesn't just have to be programmers, it can be builders of any sort, can sort of take the ideas that are manifested in their head and with a relatively high degree of fidelity, translate that into like working product for some definition of working, right? It's like, okay, that wasn't possible before. So now we can prototype quickly, we can iterate more quickly, we can produce products and even launch products more quickly than we had before, right? There's a step change already. Even if, let's say, let's say tomorrow, something happened in tech. This is a complete sci-fi scenario. And it's like the models are not going to get any better. What you have is what you have. Everything's locked down now for whatever reason. We've all collectively decided we have enough technology in our hands as builders and software companies and people of the world to last us another decade, if not longer, with just what we have, just to absorb that and the impact of the positive.
I agree with that. But you were talking, so the scenario you're talking about of like the higher level of abstraction where English is the new interface for building, it sort of, it speaks a lot of vibe coding. And you just posted on LinkedIn that there has never been and will never be a vibe coded piece of software in the HubSpot core code. Is that a point in time statement or is that a forever statement? Like, feels a little declarative and final.
Yeah, no, it's so here's a thing I actually meant. I'm gonna have to go back through and edit it because it clearly came off unintentionally wrong way. So I'm not suggesting. So we have vibe code or code built through AI coding agents in HubSpot today exists. Make it more accurate. At least 99% of HubSpot engineers right now use vibe coding, agentic coding on a daily basis, right? So this is not something that it's like, oh no, this could never work, even including our most senior engineers. So everyone's using it, and it's part of the HubSpot product. The point I was trying to drive at is that this kind of idea of because, and I prefer agentic coding, but we use vibe coding; it's more popular. Is that because vibe coding can produce code with increasing levels of accuracy, increasing fidelity over longer runs, to semi-autonomously, and that's all of those things are true. The thing that I would posit, though, is that code is a small part of the actual solution of actually putting something in customers' hands, and especially if you're now. There's multiple dimensions on which you can measure the kind of viability of vibe-coded things. For instance, if I were building an application just for myself, vibe coding is absolutely perfect. Now, as you move to larger user base or whatever, I think it becomes less perfect. Not that it can't ever do it or whatever, but that's kind of one criteria. If it's a temporary app that says I need this one time a quarter or something like that, I'm not going to run it. It's not like running my entire business or whatever. A better candidate for vibe coding than other things. So the thing I think we're further away from is to say a single person is going to vibe code an entire software business and do all things necessary in order to make that software business successful. Because that's going to involve the coding, yes. It's going to involve design, yes. It's going to involve UX testing. It's going to involve customer discussions and customer feedback. And a lot of this individual pieces we may actually have AI help with, but I'm not a believer that you can sort of vibe code your way into an iPhone app. And I just don't think it's sustainable. Yes, we have existing examples where, and you see this on the social media channels all the time, where so-and-so built a $1 million app on the App Store, vibe coding something and they've never written a line of code before. Sure, we will see those examples. But as a baseline, I don't think that's going to be the predominant model. What I think will happen is I think we will have the equivalent smaller like software teams, people that says, I'm doing this for a living for this particular category. And it's going to be in categories that historically were too small in some cases to actually pursue because the economics didn't make sense. But it's still going to be small teams of people that are devoted to building an application that they will use vibe coding tools for. But it's not just a kind of one and done, I can move to the beach and have martinis or whatever, and just the money keeps rolling in over Stripe, right? I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Let me turn the knob a little to the controversy side. So HubSpot has been patently a little late on the adoption of agents in their core offerings. A little, not too much. How do you introduce this new technology that is fast to build, fast to release in a company that's 20 years old? Is it part of the core fabric? Is it a separate team? Like, how do you accelerate? Do you think about this a lot? Like, how do you accelerate the release and the usability and the adoption of agentic type software for a company that is already successful with a ton of users, that has a culture that is already sort of like cemented it? What's the right approach?
Yeah, to answer your kind of first question, or one of your first questions, I think about this a lot. It's almost all I think about, right? It's like, as a founder, and this is not just AI. As a founder, the thing that keeps me up most nights is, are we doing everything possible to achieve our ambition, or to maximize the probability that we achieve our ambition, right? It's like, okay, well, although I'm an optimist, the paranoid side of me is always thinking, like, what decisions are happening in the business today that are going to plant the seeds of our own destruction? We just haven't seen it yet, right? It's like going to happen a year, 2 years, 5 years from now. So those are the questions I ask myself late at night. And so the way we're tackling this, and this is not necessarily new. So we have the entire core team, and we did, like others have done and have talked about publicly. In Q1 of 23, we threw out the roadmap we had at the time and said, okay, well, this is not a drill. This is not small. And so we had believers through the exec team. So it was not a lack of conviction on AI at all. And we moved, I thought, pretty quickly, but, opinions can vary as to how quickly we launched things and got things out there. But the way we approach it is that there are the things that impact the core platform and the core product, and we should do those things and are doing those things and have launched a bunch of AI features. We have agents out there, that are built and supported by the core team, like our customer agent, which is a nice, I'll call it mature for just on a relative scale as a category. But then we have, projects within HubSpot that we internally call like these HubSpot Next projects, and these operate effectively as a startup within and it's not an innovation lab per se. It's like literally a startup. So we make a investment decision around, are we going to put a seed bet down on this particular startup? It's going to have a founding team. And it is not bound literally by, I'll say any, because it's close enough rounding up to any of the constraints that HubSpot has. You don't have to use the brand. You don't have to use our billing system. You can create your own Stripe account. You can say, you can build on your own stack. You can use whatever tools you choose. You can say, I want to go after this market. So we have a limited number of guardrails, one of which is you have to have, just like a startup would need to have if it were out raising capital, a thesis about the world. Like, what do you think is going to happen in order for you to accomplish this? That's kind of one of the guardrails we have. The second one is that the would be huge if true. So we don't want these bets to say, oh, well, we're going to have this is going to be successful, and we have an 80% probability of adding $50 million ARR to HubSpot's bottom line. We don't care. Like, that's not the charter for those particular projects. Those projects are, if it works, it can be a multi-billion-dollar business. It's got a chance of being a bigger business than HubSpot itself is, like those kinds of bets. So we have a slew of those that we fund, and we're not sure.
I buy the concept of a startup. Like, how's the org structure change? Who do they report to? They still have a boss, right? Like, they're still like, where does the startup end and where does the startup begin?
Yeah, it reports directly. So we have a HubSpot org structure's gone through a change this year. We have a new CPTO, Chief Product and Technology Officer, that's head of product engineering, UX, and these HubSpot Next projects. So it all effectively rolls up to him. And I'm biased, but he is friggin' awesome. But anyway, of course I'm going to say that, but it's true. And yeah, so that's how it fits kind of structurally. But effectively, the startup, so we have...
so that person will be like their board, if you would.
So we have a 3-person board for these projects. It's me, our CEO, Yamini, and the CPTO are the 3 people that are on the board that make the decisions, and similar to how you might have. And so when we kind of put it together, and this is the first time I actually talked about this, but it's fun to kind of talk through in real time, is that, and I've been around, startups and venture and things that I've made a bunch of my own investments. So I sort of know the mechanics of how that works. And so one of the heuristics that we use is that when possible, a HubSpot Next project startup should work like a venture-backed startup would. And the only reason to deviate from that is if we have a very good reason. It's like, oh, in this case, it's different, so we should do it this way. And so, for instance, it's like, okay, well, we have a board. It's like, yep, we have a board that kind of oversees. So let's think of us as the GPs in the HubSpot Next kind of fund, so to speak. We sort of make a decision around if there's going to be like a thematic area, and ours is, yeah, we still want it. We don't like to start pizza chains or going into hardware or something like that. It's going to be related to HubSpot. Doesn't have to be our existing user persona, right? But it's like it has to be go to market kind of related, but it doesn't have to be exactly our customer base. In fact, we'd sort of prefer if, in some ways for some of the bets for it not to be. And then we have what we'll call just like we would have in the VC business, there's a partner that's effectively sponsoring the deal, right? That's the lead partner on the thing or whatever. That's going to be more involved. And so... It depends. We don't have it down to a science yet, and I think it varies across venture firms. Our thing is, yeah, exactly. To really encapsulate the thinking, the way we approach it right now is if one of us feels strongly enough about it, especially at the seed stage, and this is all most of them are kind of seed A level bets right now. If it's a seed stage thing, well, we don't need unanimous consent. We don't need forms in triplicate or anything like that. We just write the check and say, if there's someone willing to go do it. We go do it as long as we have a founder that's kind of passionate about it and the idea even obliquely makes sense. We don't want to second guess it too much. Once we get to kind of A and post A rounds, then I think, and we haven't explicitly stated, it's not the bylaws or anything like that. We have no bylaws for this, but it's my sense is that like a 2 out of 3 vote would win. It's like if 2 of the 3 of us like disagree on something, then it's like. And the third one, maybe if they're passionate enough, can kind of convince the other 2 or at least one of them to kind of switch their vote. But yeah, we haven't had to deal with that yet. It's a very collegial team which has always been the HubSpot way. Yeah, we know what we're trying to do.
What other forms do you consider before you came up with the HubSpot Next?
I'll say this only partly in jest, is pretty much all of their forms. It's this idea of trying to do innovation in a larger company is one that is not new to HubSpot. It's a problem. It has been for decades, and books have been written about it, and lots of talks have been given. I've listened to a lot of them. So we've tried variations of it. We've tried the incubation model where we say, hey, we're going to have this company. We're going to carve out one of the core products teams that's closest to the idea that we're pursuing, but we're still going to give them some constraints. Like, okay, you're still kind of flying under the HubSpot banner. You're going to have these things that has to move within a year or two. Numbers that we actually currently track that like make sense. It's going to move the needle on numbers that we already measure. So it's which these are what some might call like Horizon 2 kind of bets for those that follow the Horizon framework. So we've tried that variation. It's funny though. It's like I don't know that there's any real perfect answer. This one seems to be, having been at this for a while now and been very close to these kinds of projects at HubSpot. Seems to be working the best. And it may be just a sign of the times that maybe this is the time to be doing those kinds of things because we're going through a transformation. Everything's, the deck's being reshuffled in a way anyway.
So if a CEO of $100 million company were to come to you and say, hey, I got to move faster. All my agentic projects are stuck somewhere in the product roadmap, in Jira tickets. They tell me they're coming. They're just not coming. Like, what would be your advice to all those SaaS CEOs out there who are trying to like get back to growth?
I'll say this as founder CTO. My advice would be you don't solve that problem with an innovation bet or a HubSpot Next or a startup within a startup. You solve that problem, and it might be painful, is that you might be looking at a team change or a leadership change or an org change or a culture change or all of the above, right? It's like, okay, if the team is not bought in, if there's passive resistance, if there's and this is you sort of have to. This we don't like to do kind of mandates and edicts at HubSpot. That's not the HubSpot way, as it historically has not been. But there are times where, like, we do make a top-down decision that says, "Okay, this is what we're doing. This is not an experiment." And it's like I think what happens, and this is actually a good story since we're having this conversation. So the last time we had this level of, I'll call it an intervention is probably overly strong a word, but like that is when we got into CRM. So when Brian and I made the decision...
Well, that must be a tough decision. Wow.
That was hard, right? Because we had been so successful as a marketing software company. We were growing, and this is a year before we went public. So, and we knew we were like, that was on the path. It's like, really? You're going to like effectively like pivot the company the year before going
Come again, tell me this one more time.
Okay, so our board's like, exactly, like play the tape again one more time. I must have missed something, right? In the board meetings and like every meeting, and there were a couple of lessons from this, right? And really good lessons, deeply held lessons, and it turned out well. And we have lessons on things that didn't turn out well too that we can talk about. But this one, what ended up happening is if I do it all over again, I would do it. And here's why, is that I am a big believer in experimentation, doing innovation bets and startup within a startup, all of those things. But there are some things where you have what I think of as self-fulfilling prophecies. So when we made that decision and we very clearly communicated to the company that says, hey, we're doing the CRM thing. It's not an experiment. It's not, oh, we're going to go try this and see if it works. Otherwise, we've got the, mark. It's like, we're going to do this. It doesn't matter if it takes us a year or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. We don't care. We are going to be a CRM company. We're going to build this, right? And we didn't know how long it was going to take, and it ended up taking many, many years, right? And because it's a hard problem. But what ends up happening, and this is kind of the lesson learned, is that once you show that clarity of conviction, all the stars start to align, right? What ends up happening is like, okay, well, this is not an experiment. Your best engineers and product people and the people that have built the company that are the needle movers got to work on that thing. It's like, that's the thing that, the founders have said is the thing, right? That's our next big bet. Versus like on some of the experimental projects, it's not you can't bring in great people, but some of them are like a little bit kind of, it's like, okay, well, like, is this a good career move for me? Is this, will this be around in 6 or 9 months? Like, is it really needle moving? So lots of things fall into place once you make that decision, make it clear. So back to your question, if you are finding that you're struggling making the AI transition, it has to be a conviction bet. You have to, in the upper, layers of the company, the inner circles, you sort of have to decide, like, do we all believe that this is the case? Which if you don't believe now, then you got bigger problems. It's like, okay, I don't know how much more evidence you need at this point. And then you have to say, okay, well, do we have the right people? Do we have the right culture? And if not, what, it doesn't matter how drastic, what do we have to do? Because that would be, to me, an existential threat that says, okay, if we do not make this transition, we may cease to exist as a company.
So when you made that decision, what was the passive resistance? Like, what was the people that did not go along and that you have to part ways with? Like, and how did that show up?
The way it always shows up, right? Which is there's a fine line between passive resistance and lack of active passion, right? Is that because what you're looking for, right? Is you're like, oh my God, I ran Claude Code yesterday or something like that. It's unbelievable what this thing can do, right? And even if not completely true, you want people that kind of see the light, so to speak, right? So the next level down, that's the ideal state, right? And you're going to have some number of those in most companies at scale. You're going to have that, and ideally, some of them are in the kind of upper levels of the company and can push. We were fortunate that all three, which I think of Yamini, Brian, and I as the three that we saw them like very, very early, and there was no resistance. And so then, but the passive resistance shows up as what I think of, and this is not just AI related, it shows up in orgs of all sizes, is what I think of as like checkbox management. It's like, okay, well, I know I'm supposed to do X, whatever X happens to be. I know I'm supposed to explore AI. I know I'm supposed to try this. I know I'm supposed to do that. And I will do I won't call it minimum viable effort. So they're not intentionally trying to like make it minimum viable, but in their soul of souls, they don't think it's going to work. And so they're not going all in on it, right? They're just making a bet that's okay. We'll put a few people on it. Yeah, I know Dharmesh said this and Yamini said that or whatever, but we're going to, and I'm not saying this is exactly what happened, but this is how it would, could manifest. And so that's the thing. You sort of have to, and part of it is just resolvable through that clarity of conviction. That's why this is not a drill. And part of it, sometimes comes through, org changes, leadership changes, can be up and down in the organization. And some of it comes in, some form of passive resistance, and this is specific to AI, shows up in the form of people that just don't, in principle, agree with AI, and that is actually good for humanity. That happens, by the way, and I'm not saying it's going to be 50% of the organization.
I'm a little shocked, but maybe I'm in a bubble. So tell me more.
Yeah, so there's going to be more than zero. I'll bet you money in any organization. I'll say over 100 people. There will be at least 1 or 2 people that said. And these are the same people. Well, and it's because they've seen other technologies come along, like crypto, right? And you have the same kind of name. It's like, oh, I understand the ticket, but this is just not good for humanity. It's like AI. Oh, this is just not good for humanity. It doesn't really work. Then you have AI slop, and you have all these things. It's like, and they'll sort of pull the thread, and you still see this in media now, right? So based on which narrative you decide to believe in, I could make an equally compelling case. We could spend the next hour on all the things that are wrong with AI and why we should be worried and the things to kind of worry about. And that's, but they sort of internalize that as a result of which. And so what we did, what very clearly, and this was not passed as a value judgment, we said, we are going to be the AI first customer platform. We are like we have the conviction, similar to how we had the CRM bet, right? It's like anything we will move mountains, whatever it takes. We're going to do those things. If you are not comfortable with that, there are amazing companies out there. You're an amazing person. Our advice to you would be to literally to go somewhere else. That life is short. It's not. I agree, but in a way, sort of, it is, right? So HubSpot is partly around empathy, and it's like, okay, well, if we were them, would we want to? And all of it was true, right? It was not like we were making something up. I think we were being very transparent. That says, this is not like an exercise. We're not just saying it so we can get on earnings calls and tell the investors that, oh, we too are an AI company kind of thing. It's like we feel this in our soul, that this is the transition that HubSpot is going to need to make. And part of what has kind of driven the amount of success that HubSpot has had is we are on a noble mission. Like we are still have conviction around SMB. We did not get pulled, and we can talk about that as well. That's another important lesson learned. But it's like if you're no longer aligned with the mission, which is now incorporates AI, go to somewhere where you are.
What were the hard choices around? Not to judge, but becoming an AI customer platform doesn't feel burning the ships too much. What were the actual hard choices at the point of the engineer, the product manager, the person selling, the person successing that have to be made for you to move from a customer platform to a customer AI customer platform? Yeah,
well, first, so when we made the original call in Q1 of 23, we said, this is a transition we're making. First, it's like not to burn the boats, but burn the product roadmap. Literally, it's like, okay, well, like all bets off the table. And as you might imagine, we've had that planned out, right? Like, we've been through the planning cycle. We know what we're exactly right. And these are all things that we, in most instances, had very animated debates about it. Like, what should be on the roadmap? What are the priorities? What are we doing? Where's the product headed? Where's the platform headed? What's happening? Like, it's not like we did have no plans. We had plans that we were all very passionate about that we had already kind of debated through. Then to come in and say, yeah, so we're not doing that. We're going to start. It's like there's a cost term in accounting called like zero cost budgeting or something like that.
Yeah, where you erase the budget, you start from scratch.
Yeah, you start from scratch, right? And as would happen, some things are obviously going to kind of come back on it, but we start from the zero things. Like, okay, what are the things we need to do? And the hard calls, and this is still a call, right? It's still happening as we speak, because as much as we all love AI, the challenge is that, and it's on an exponential curve, and all the things that we hear about the technology is very, very true. As it turns out, humans are not on said exponential curve in terms of human change. So when you go to a 50-person law firm or one of our other 270,000 customers, and we say, hey, there's this new thing called AI, and you should be using it in this, and this way, and we have features and products that you don't even have to pay for. Like, you can just try them out. They're included in the price you're already paying. Change management, it's always hard. Just because this technology is revolutionary does not necessarily mean that Susan, the VP of marketing, or Joe, the VP of sales, is going to say, oh yeah, of course, I'm going to throw out my plan and my quota and my budget and everything and rethink it in terms of AI, right? Like, there's a slower adoption cycle.
Yeah, that brings it to a very important point, which is, so who in the organization was in charge of making sure that those new AI tools, applications, experiences were adopted and successful? Like, whose job changed to ensure that indeed HubSpot became the AI customer-centric platform?
Yeah, the biggest change is the obvious one is the product team, right? Because they're the ones kind of building the product, and most things at HubSpot are kind of product led and platform led. But then it's really comes down to, and it's once again, we don't like mandates and edicts. It comes down to, or up to the CEO, I will say, is that, and like, because she's going to have to with assistance from me and Brian and kind of instill down into them, it's like, this is very, very real, and then have a very kind of hard look at what's happening, and we, alongside of this, right, and we culture was brought up earlier. One of the bigger changes we've made to HubSpot culture, which I've always thought of as a product and led the charge on for a long time, is that the HubSpot culture actually needed to change as well. And this was unrelated to AI. This was it just that the big transition sort of surfaced. This is that so HubSpot has always had this reputation of being, very empathetic, kind, which we are. That has been, a large part of our success. One thing that sort of happened, and I think and we were not alone. I've talked to lots of founders of companies at scale where it was the same, and some of them have publicly talked about it, is during the boom years, the post-COVID years, when everything was headed up and to the right at double or triple digit rates, it was easy to sort of become, I'll use the word complacent. It's the one that jumps to mind right now. And then what ends up happening is that, and we were growing fast, hiring lots of people really fast. And what happens is people join the company and they sort of pick and choose the elements of the culture that sort of rests like, oh, I hear you guys are like empathetic and kind and this and this and this and this. It's like, yeah, but did you miss the parts that we are intense? Like we are like, we are here to win. Like, we did not get here by, so it's like, and so what ended up happening is that we sort of had this sort of drift in the HubSpot culture. So it's, and I'm a product guy, and when we talk about HubSpot culture as the second product that we build, it's like, oh, our product had drifted in terms of it no longer serving the needs of the actual customer, which is the team and the company at large. So we've made a shift to say, okay, well, we're going to, not that we're not going to continue to be empathetic and nice and all those things, but like, the number one slide in the HubSpot 128 slide deck is solve for the customer. And you cannot solve for the customer it's like they are literally, like, if you can draw a path for me that says I'm doing this and this way, because I think it's actually in service of the customer, you will have me as an advocate. But you can't do it. It's like, oh, well, it'll make the employees happier. It'll do this. It's like, that's a secondary, tertiary benefit. It's like, oh, if we have happier employees, they'll serve the... But if that, like the first order direct benefit to customers, it's solving for the customer should trump things every time. So yeah.
So you use the same rubric and the same true north to reestablish this.
Yes, but put the spotlight on the elements of the culture that to make it less ambiguous as to the fact that this is what we're solving for. And we had that same, you said a broader kind of company-wide scale that said we are changing our culture, partly driven by AI, partly just this awakening that was happening in the kind of post-COVID boom years. It's like, we don't think this is right. I think the culture has drifted. Here's how it's going to, and once again, this may not be the right company for you. Like we didn't say, leave, but it's like, it may not be the company but yeah, so.
That's amazing. So, this podcast is about getting paid building AI. So let's talk about getting paid building AI. So how's your thinking evolve in monetizing HubSpot now that the AI agent is here? So marketing automation began with you charge for accounts for like the number of leads that you had in the database. Very clear model. Everybody was doing the same model. CRM is more on a per seat basis, etc. So now you have these agents that are driving work and outcomes and tasks and full resolutions. What's your thinking there? Like, how much of the old pricing model monetization is going to stay? How much is going to change? Well, what's the latest?
Yeah, the latest, our thinking is that the seats model in some form still makes sense for some portion of our products, for some portion of our customers, because it's like, okay, if you're selling a tool that humans will use, that's a close enough proxy. There's a reason it worked. It's because it works.
Wait, is it because of that, or is it because there is less friction in the sales cycle because people are used to buying per seat?
Both. I think it makes sense, and as a result of which, and we're used to selling it in that way. I think it's both. But then So let's look at the kind of the AI side of it. So I'll tell you the answer first, and then we can
we'll backtrack into the explanation.
The answer is we're going to have a hybrid pricing model that is partly seat based and partly consumption based. And the consumption based side of it is going to be this this credit based model that says, okay, certain parts of the HubSpot product consume credits at certain rates, and you buy a certain number of credits, and there's a plan, and the mechanics are in place for that. The thing we have not done, and I can tell you the debate that we had or discussion we had internally, is we elected not to do the outcome-based pricing, including for customer agent. And our motivation for that, not that it doesn't make sense for a customer agent, and there are people in the companies that are really good and have had success with it. Our thinking was we think different pricing axes add dimensional complexity to a business, right? So when we were pre-CRM days, when we didn't have seats at all, it was all kind of the number of contacts in your database. That was a nice, simple model. That's how you bought. It was fine. And even before that, we had a single price, which was like the stupidest thing in pricing pricing history. We can talk about that too. We want to reduce the number of, like, what's the minimum number of dimensions we can have, the variable axis as we think of it, right? And so one, we think it's going to continue to be seats, partly because industry's used to it. We know how to sell it. It makes sense if you're still selling software to humans. And if there were ever a day that there are no humans to sell software to, or that's no longer a good proxy for value, like, we're not dogmatic about it. But the reason we kind of decided not to do outcome in addition to the kind of credit-based, pure kind of consumption-based model was that was an additional axis that we thought the marginal value of that did not outweigh the complexity that it would introduce. And for a couple of reasons. The other thing, and this is part of the discussion we had as well, is that we sort of gravitate towards the examples we have right now, and they're great examples on the kind of customer agent side. But I'm like, okay, but this doesn't really. So what makes it successful, or made it successful in that particular sector of the market, is that customer service has been around for a long time. The cost per ticket roughly. You have an approximate. Most organizations know what it costs them. You have an objective measure for successful outcome, which is the CSAT high enough? Was the agent able to resolve the issue, right? So there's a set of traits, I'll call it, that make customer service agents almost near perfect fit for an outcome-based model, right? So objective measure of success, economic value associated with that, the successful outcome, and a way to sort of measure whether you're doing.
But Dharmesh, how much of that is hindsight? I mean, it's obvious now. It wasn't obvious 2 years ago.
No, but it's like, but we didn't have to make a decision 2 years ago, right? We were still like in the midst of like, what does this need to look like?
So the market is there, it's clear, settled. You still decided not to do it because it increases dimensional complexity to your thing.
So let's look at an example, right? So let's look at other parts of go-to-market. So let's say we had like a content creation or marketing oriented agent, which we do. And we said, this thing, I'm making this example up because it doesn't exist, but let's say it did, is a logo creator agent. It's like, okay, so because we serve SMBs, lots of startups, so maybe we have the world's best logo creation agent someday. It's like, well, so we could charge and say, it costs $100 a logo. Okay, is a logo worth $100, or is it worth $10 or on Fiverr, or is it worth $5,000 if you go to a big brand? What does a successful outcome for a logo look like? And what would you pay? It's like, well, so the things, and what's the economic value per logo? We don't know any of those things, right? So that's almost at the other end of the spectrum, which there's no objective measure. The economic value is variable, especially across industries and across companies. And so, our thinking was that's not the only example of the logo, because I just made that one up. There's going to be examples of things where outcome-based pricing is not going to solve it. So we can't go to full outcome, right? So then the question is, do we have 3 dimensions or do we have 2 dimensions? And we made the decision, let's go with 2 dimensions, because anything that we could do in an outcome, as we're learning with customer agent, can sort of be formulated in the form of a credit-based model that says, okay, it's going to be a lower price, but the customer is sort of absorbing I get to decide what the outcome is or whatever, but I'm just going to pay based on X credit consumption.
Yeah, no, and the credit thing actually makes a total sense, especially for companies that are moving from seat-based to seat-based low some kind of usage, because the agent is actually doing all this work. Let me ask you a question around credits. Why introduce an intermediate currency that is not dollars? What does that do to the model? Why couldn't it just be dollars instead of credits?
Yeah, that's a really good question. When we talked about, and the reason is, and this is not to, and I'm not an economist, I'm not even smart enough to. Sometimes I clearly went on TV, is that the value of a currency existing is because that currency is then kind of is fungible, right? So you can sort of change the rate card, so to speak. When you go to dollars, it's like, okay, well. So we talk about dollars. It's like, okay, why not just dollars? But it wouldn't be dollars because we are actually a multi-currency product, as you would expect, right? We're in 100 plus countries or whatever. So it's like, so we needed a currency that says, okay, well, things cost of varying amounts or whatever. So we need some currency. And so one of the decisions we made is a credit is a credit is a credit. So we have a unified currency, which across all of HubSpot. And the only thing that varies is that some actions might cost multiple credits instead of one credit. But what we like about it, we like the simplicity of it. We tend to, when in doubt, take the simpler path because there's always time to make things more complicated. It's always harder to try to make things more simple again and go back the other way because the way the universe works, entropy and everything. But that's now me playing physicist and economist on the same show. But the idea was, can we keep it simple, come down to a single currency, and then we can sell that currency, so to speak, because it has some nice pricing mechanics that I think would be kind of relevant to your business, because we can sell batches of credits. We can sell subscriptions to credits that says, oh, just like, and there's, and these kind of credit-based models have been around for a long time. We've had them in the mobile industry with minutes and things like that. And then that, obviously evolved over the years. But you have a little bit more flexibility in terms of rate card changes. And for instance, it would sort of be weird if we wanted to sell bulk. It's like, you're selling me bulk dollars. So you're selling me $500 worth of currency of AI consumption for $300. That is like, I don't think that would fit in people's head as well. Now, having said all of that, one thing we are learning and still evolving is that businesses, including our market particularly, are not used to credits yet. They just aren't, right? So people don't love that idea. It's like, okay, well, and so it's going to take, so our sales force has to be kind of educated and trained, and they're going to have to go through some cycles and some iterations to kind of get to how to, but one of the big benefits that came from that credit model, though, we could have actually done with outcome as well, but, versus, so when we started this, we were not sure what this being the kind of the AI rollout of products and features, we made a very pivotal decision. And that decision was that AI was not an add-on product that you bought. Like at time t equals 0, when we went kind of out with it, and we talked to the board and even to the investors and explained this, and our thesis behind it was that, so we think we are in a new generation of our industry, being CRM and customer platforms. And the last big shift that we saw was Salesforce with the cloud CRM, which is brilliant and brilliantly executed, massively successful company. What Salesforce didn't do, they didn't say, hey, we are a CRM company going against the incumbents like Siebel, and we have this cloud option now that they don't have. They didn't say that. They said, we are a cloud CRM company, and you cannot buy Salesforce except for the cloud version. There is no non-cloud version of Salesforce, right? Like this is the path, this is the way, which we think makes total sense. So when we said, oh, we are going to be the AI native CRM company, customer platform company, we can't say that and then say, oh, and by the way, AI is something you add on. That's like Elon coming to us as like, we do EVs, and you have to buy the battery in order to get the electric features of a Tesla. That just at face value, that sounds sort of kind of silly, right? And so what we said is, we're going to bake some fundamental, so our Copilot, our Breeze Assistant, which is our Copilot, included in the product and free. The early features, all free. And we're like, okay, and part of the kind of core culture and kind of business philosophy of HubSpot is we always like to create value and create economic surplus. This is the second economics reference. Create economic and consumer surplus, and then go back and say, okay, well, we can start taking some of that value back. And there are lots of studies around how much of the economic surplus you can capture. Yeah, so we have now started monetizing now as in earlier this year. We said, okay, customer agent, clear value. There's market acceptance of that use. No brainer. And so now that we have the framework in place, so the way we approach it is that for our kind of flagship agents that we have out there, we say every customer gets those agents for free and gets a certain number of credits for free. So we don't sell the agent per se, and you get to try it. So it's like, and that's one of the other benefits of that credit model is we can afford to do that. It's like, okay, well, the ones that are successful with it will continue consuming credits, and we should see that kind of credit consumption line go up over time at some point, roughly predictable ways, right? At the scale that we kind of deal with it, we have, 9,000-10,000 customers a quarter net new that will be joining, so we can kind of follow cohorts, newer and older. So that's where we've sort of wound up. It's like now we have the framework in place. It's seats plus credits. Seats we know very, very well. Credits, we make a decision. Is this something that is that customers will ascribe value to, that it makes sense for us, and that and we try not to do it based on COGS, although secretly, I think parts of the business do. It's like, oh, but wait a second, Dharmesh, we can't not charge for this because there's, COGS involved because, we're paying, OpenAI Anthropic bills and such. But yeah, so.
The last question just before we wrap. So we extrapolate the business 5 years from now, if you would. And how much is the credit contribution to the business versus the seed contribution to the business versus something else you're not thinking about contribution to the business?
My sense is that the trend line will move up. So I don't know, and I'm not allowed to provide dates and timelines and slopes of curves and such, but I expect that over the fullness of time, credits will become the predominant model. And the reason for this is that more and more of the value that HubSpot creates will be better better articulated and better captured with that model versus the seat-based model. And the way we want, and this is something I tell anyone that asks me, is that my sense right now is that, and so one of the questions we get sometimes from Wall Street is around, oh, well, aren't you going to see this kind of headwind because the number of seats is going to go down as AI takes over more and more things? It's like, okay, well, yes, but my expectation is that if we create software such that it reduces by X%, let's say someone in a particular role, that is actually higher value creation, and that actually makes the EV of HubSpot go up, not down, right? So yes, maybe seats will go down, but the thing that they're getting, the thing we're selling, the thing that we built actually has more value than the seat we were selling before that. So in an ideal world, I'm like, okay, well, if we can sort of that clearly demonstrate kind of value to our customers and on kind of return on investment, it's very simple. It's simpler math. The seat math says, oh, well, I have X number of Y people and I can reduce or either increase productivity by X or it's just the table stakes. You have to have a Y piece of software, for those people to function. I would much rather tie it to actual kind of value optically, kind of seen more visibly.
I 100% agree. I think all systems of record, this is the recipe that is working right now, and of adding credit consumption to the seat, and count on that as a lever of growth and going forward.
Yeah, I think it's the parts of AI that are, we talked about the expansion and the market opportunity for software companies because we can go after much larger pieces of value. And the other one is around, so SaaS brought it with it the kind of subscription model. AI is sort of the underpinnings of this kind of credit-based model, which is sort of related, but kind of not, right? We could have done that before, but I think the reason it makes more sense in an AI world is that because now we can connect the dots on here's how this actually takes on some kind of historically human-oriented or human-exclusive tasks. So I think that sort of makes sense, yeah.
100%. Dharmesh, we are at time. This has been incredible. Thanks again so much for making the time. I could have stayed another hour talking to you. We didn't even talk about agents.ai, which is a whole...
We'll save it for next time. Yeah.
Exactly.
By the way, there's no rule that says guests can't come on twice, Manny.
That is true. I have nothing but questions for you, and I really appreciate you sharing the wisdom with our audience. Thank you so much for your time. If you like the podcast, click like or subscribe. We are on the Apple Podcast platform. We're on the Spotify platform. We're on the YouTube platform. We are on all major platforms. We're always fresh. Every week it comes out. Let's get paid.